Welcome to Journey to Esquire, the podcast. I'm Jocelyn Hardrick, founder and president of Diversity Access Pipeline, Inc., the company behind this podcast and other great programs, like Journey to Esquire Scholarship and Leadership Program, which provides $2,000 cash scholarships to third-year law students and internships to second-year law students, along with leadership training and mentors. And Journey to Esquire, the blog, which provides insightful articles to help navigate you through law school and beyond. Find out more on our website, www.journeytoesquire.com.
Hey, it's Jocelyn Hardrick. We are back with another great episode of Journey to Esquire, the podcast. Today, we're going to pass the mic to Starr Linette Brookins. And Starr is just an outstanding person. She's a friend of the Journey to Esquire program. She's a friend of mine, and she's everywhere. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about Starr. She is a fourth generation Tampa native. She went to University of Tampa undergrad, and she is a member of the Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. She's really into the community, current president-elect of the Hillsborough Association Women Lawyers, current vice president of Guardian at Litem Foundation of Tampa Bay, current Young Women of Promise chair for the Athena Society. She's a board member and immediate past chair of a lot of other organizations. She's also received a lot of honors and accolades. For example, the Leader in the Law Awards from the Florida Association for Women Lawyers, Best Lawyers, One to Watch, Tampa Bay Girls Rock honoree for the Civic Award, Tampa Bay Business Journal's 40 Under 40 Awards nominee. And she was raised in a law enforcement and military family, and that's how she developed an unwavering and significant respect for the rule of law. This appreciation got deeper when she ventured through life and serving as an anti-terrorism dispatch officer, helping those who dedicate their lives to protecting and serving the community. And she wants to ensure that everyone is heard and treated with the utmost respect and fairness. Welcome, Starr.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Yeah, thank you for making time in your busy schedule. I've been trying to get you in here for a while, and then I'm like, she's at this event, she's at this trial, she's doing this. And then you showed up to the Journey to Esquire 5th anniversary celebration, said, hey, I want to help. And you showed up early and helped. And I was like, wow, thank you so much. Because it was so needed at that time. And it was just phenomenal of you to be able to do that. So you're doing all the things, and you're doing a lot of more great things to come. Let's go back in time and talk about why you wanted to become a lawyer.
I wanted to become a lawyer to help people, and we hear that all of the time. And actually, what got me involved in the legal field was more so we had a peer mediation program that our elementary school was starting. And so they asked all of our classmates to choose the two people that you trusted the most, because we're starting this peer mediation program to help everyone resolve their conflicts. And lo and behold, I got chosen, which was surprising to me because I'm a military brat. So I move every 2 years. So for me to have been able to make that sort of impact on my peers' lives in such a short period of time meant a lot to me. And through that process, there was an issue involving one of my closest friends. And the other person, they were like, it's fine. It can go in front of Starr. I know she's going to be trustworthy. I know that's her best friend, but I know she's going to still listen to me. And so that has always stuck with me. And that's the same way that I've tried to carry myself throughout life. So that's actually what brought me to that level. And I've always been a huge reader. I like the art of storytelling, right? And I think that's what led me to being a trial attorney. And I've always loved writing. So that's why I dipped my toe in the appellate world as well, because I love writing. To help people has been the huge overarching theme for why I chose to become involved in the legal world.
Yeah, so like you said, a lot of people say that, and not a lot of people decided in elementary school like we did. Sometimes there's a seed planted in your heart and you have the vision at a young age. And so there it is. And so my kids come to me at a young age and said, I really think about doing this. I just believe them, right? Because we'll see if it changes. It never changed for me. It sounds like it didn't change for you because here we are. So now fast forward, you're in college, thinking about law school. What was that law school application process like for you?
That application process was overwhelming, to say the least, right? I'm a first generation law student, first generation lawyer. So I had no idea what I was doing. I was blessed in that I went to a small school. So, University of Tampa, a very small school, a lot of hands on attention. And I had two wonderful mentors, two professors who really took me under their wings and allowed me to flourish and thrive and ask them all of the questions that I didn't feel comfortable asking other people. But they had both gotten their law degrees and gone on into academia. So I really leaned in on them a lot. And I applied to a lot of different schools. I didn't expect to get into George Washington Law School, if we're just being honest. Whenever I got my LSAT score back, I thought someone was playing a prank on me. I was absolutely devastated. And I thought I thought I wasn't going to get into any of my law schools that I applied to. I ended up getting into every law school that I applied to. And I actually got a merit scholarship to George Washington Law School. And it just took a lot of having people in your corner who are there even when you don't think you need help. I was always very focused and I always knew what I want. So whenever I got all the applications together and I started the process very early, I made sure that I got it to where I wanted it and then I had them look at it because it's always helpful to have a second and third set of eyes look at your law school application and just make small tweaks, have a conversation about it, actually prod into you and ask you, why do you want to do this? What is it about the law that makes you want to be involved? And then you just have to get that out through your story. It was very overwhelming, but I had people in my corner to help. And I think that's why I've latched on so much to mentoring young lawyers, young college students, especially first generations, just so that they know they can do it. They have it inside of them. I put the package together myself and I didn't get that much feedback from them. I got a little bit, but they're like, you're on the right track. So just believe in yourself and go after it. But it's always good to have that support.
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting because you come from a law enforcement military background, which people think you have experience and connections to the government, but that's not quite the same thing. Law school is a completely different world, process, and like you said, it can be overwhelming. And a lot of people talk about their LSAT scores, and we never say what the score is because, frankly, it changes year to year. Right? One score one year may get you into all your schools you applied, and 5 years later, you're getting into no schools because it really depends on how many people are applying. And just do your best, though. Those standardized tests are not a good measure of the quality of lawyer you will become, although law schools depend on them because they get so many applications. They have to find some way to weed people out. That's an encouraging thing. Don't let the score stop you from applying. I always tell students, let them tell you no, just apply. There's some restrictions if you're not willing to move there, if you don't have enough money to pay for the application fees. It is a lot of work, but don't tell yourself no. Keep trying till you get in. So you're at George Washington School of Law. What's your experience like? Did you like law school?
I did like law school. I'm going to be very frank. One of the first events that I went to, of course, GW in Georgetown, they're pretty close. So we were very connected, especially the local BALSA chapters. So there was just a welcome event for the 1Ls, and it was hosted by BALSA chapters, but everybody was welcome. And so we went to a game night. We went to Georgetown for it. And it was where we were trying to guess what word they. And so they're pointing to people and they're like, this is how they got into law school. The word was affirmative action. And so they pointed to me, they pointed to my friend RG, who was at Georgetown. And it wasn't the first time that I had experienced that. I actually experienced that at University of Tampa as well. Whenever we would talk about, because I was in pre-law courses in college, and we talk about things like affirmative action, and RG and I were the smartest people in those classes. And they always talk about, and they'd be like, not RG and Starr, not them. that's not how they're getting into these great schools. So it's something that's there and that's omnipresent and that you're always going to have to deal with people's assumptions and biases. And you're always going to have to work against that to prove yourself more than someone who doesn't look like you. And you always feel like you have to do more just to show that you're worthy of being in that seat. But if I could go back, I wouldn't even worry about that. I would have just focused on my studies instead of trying to prove to someone that I belonged at that school that I got into, just like they did. But overall, I loved the process. I loved learning that different way of learning. And I found a close group of friends and we would study together. I had a lot of great opportunities because I was in DC. So, a lot of great opportunities to work on the Hill, work at the Department of Justice. And there's just so much culture in DC that I absolutely loved, but I couldn't wait to get back home.
Oh, yeah, fourth generation Tampa. So I'm like, that cold weather, that first winter must have hit you hard.
And I missed my best friend's wedding too because I got snowed in.
Oh, yeah. See, and I'm from New York, so everyone's always, don't you miss New York? I said, absolutely not. Not with this beautiful weather I have in Denver. I do not. And you can't pay me to come back during cold weather. It's going to be something that I cannot come any other time. Interesting. So, what were some of the activities you were involved in during law school?
I've always been extremely active, even starting back to high school days. And law school, I was involved with, of course, the BALSA. And then I was also the chair at the Mid Atlantic region. And at the national level, I was the elections chair. So I was really involved. And BALSA took up a lot of my time. And I think I went where I felt a community. So I went there, I felt accepted. I could talk to people about the game night and what their experiences have been and navigating through the process. And I was just very involved in different journals, law journals. I worked a lot. While I was in law school, DC is very expensive. So I did internships on top of actually having a job because I needed to support myself in order to afford to live in DC. But a lot of the people that I met through those employment experiences and those internships, they're still supporters to this day. We still check in on each other. It was a great experience. And law school was actually the first time that I had two Black female law professors. So that was great. One was in women in the law and one was corporations. My professor for corporations actually introduced our new Supreme Court justice during one of her interviews. So it was a full circle moment. And it was just so great to see that. But overall, it was just really great experience.
Okay, so you had a bunch of different experiences while you're in DC. You want to come back to Tampa. How did you choose your practice area and then what you thought your first job would be? Talk to us about that process.
So I only applied for one type of job. I really wanted to do child welfare and I really wanted to do it from a prosecutorial perspective. So those are the only jobs that I applied for out of law school. I just wanted to be back home. I really wanted to be in Tampa, but I applied to different counties within Florida. So I got picked up by Osceola County with Children's Legal Services representing the state of Florida in child abuse, abandonment, and neglect cases. And I was there for about 3 years. I chose law school to learn about all the different areas of law that I might not even consider. Like I took tax and I never thought that I would like tax, but it was probably one of my favorite courses in law school. So I know a lot of people, they go into law school and they're pigeonholed. They think they want to be a criminal lawyer. So they take all these criminal law courses, criminal procedure, everything that's criminal. But I would really encourage people to branch out and try different things. You never know what you might like and where it might lead you.
Yeah, that's true. And as a law professor, I teach criminal law and constitutional law. So the criminal law part, students come in, I don't want to do criminal law at all. I'm like, just keep an open mind. And then every term, someone changes their mind, ends up doing like a prosecution clinic or something. And then they're just loving. Now they want to do trial work and never thought they'd be in litigation. So just keep an open mind. So tell us a little more about what is it about child welfare cases and neglect and abuse, where that interest came from.
That interest came from in undergrad. I was actually involved in an organization called Stand Up for Kids. And so we were basically trying to find homeless kids and getting them help. And during a lot of those conversations with those children, a lot of them had been involved in the child welfare system and they aged out and they just go nowhere or they ran away because they got removed from a parent and they got placed in a situation that was, quite frankly, not better. So they sustained more abuse in the child welfare system, which caused them to just run away. And they were homeless and just living that way. So that really connected with me. So after I got involved with that, I found the Guardian at Litem program, went through the training, served as a guardian at Litem here in Hillsborough County. And then I went off to law school. So that always stuck in the back of my mind. And I felt after law school, it was still there. And my law school didn't have any dependency type courses. So I couldn't really explore that further. But I felt if it was still taking up so much space in my mind, that's where I needed to be. I decided to go down that route. I've always been connected with helping young people. And one of my closest friends growing up, she had actually been sexually abused by her grandfather. So having those types of conversations with her and just wanting to help people through that process and navigate that process, I felt like that was my calling. There is nothing more difficult than preparing a child to testify with their parent in the room about abuse. It's very intimidating for them. It brings up more trauma. But I felt like I had a real gift for connecting with them and bringing them out of that and allowing their full self to flourish and just letting them know that this is not their entire story and that they get to create their narrative. So it was just very empowering. So I knew that was the right place for me.
Yeah, I had a similar interest when I was in law school. I tried to get jobs doing dependency work, and no one would hire me to do that specifically. And then one of the last places I applied said, well, why don't you just become a gardener at Litem? Which is, so I just want to explain a little bit. So you are a volunteer. You don't have to be a lawyer. A lot of them are non-lawyers. And your job is to represent the child throughout all the proceedings. You're the one person whose only job is to focus on the child and what the child wants, right? Because the parents have an attorney, there's a judge there, and the child has an attorney, but they have, what the cases, you actually go and do visits with the child in their new placement. You talk to them, and then you're an adult who can testify on their behalf as to what their desires are. So I did that as a volunteer for Pinellas County in Florida, and there's a big need. So if have an interest in that, I want to encourage you to look up in your community. Can you be a guardian ad litem? If you're an adult and you pass a background check, that's a really important service that really helps the system because it's just overwhelming and it's overburdened and underfunded, like a lot of the things dealing with children. And like you, I had this connection with children because they're the most vulnerable amongst us in our society. Even when you look at marginalized communities, look at the children, they're even more marginalized. They definitely need representation.
And it's tough breaking into that field. I luckily had a sorority sister who was a dependency attorney. And I didn't find that out until I was trying to get into that area. So we had a lot of phone calls and she prepared me for my interview because those interviews are tough too. And they go through a lot of hypotheticals about medical abuse, medical neglect, this big thing with Gypsy Rose Blanchard about those issues. She really helped walk me through chapter 39 and helps me with a lot of the hypotheticals so that whenever I actually finally did secure an interview, I got the job. But it's very tough to break into, but your network matters. And of course, I was in Osceola County, which for those who don't know is in Kissimmee. So between Orlando and Tampa and that area where Disney is. And there's a lot of incest in that area. Very
Oh,
transient city and a lot of incest.
yeah. And then Pinellas County had a lot of people whose parents were getting addicted to fentanyl and all that stuff. And so it was a lot of neglect, not just abuse. The parents were just so out of it. They didn't pay bills. They end up living in their car. And then these kids are getting picked up on the sides of the road. It was reaching epidemic proportions at some point when I was doing it. And it's funny, I was preparing for the interview and I remember I took out chapter 39 and I'm studying the statute and I'm doing back and I'm Googling back panels. My husband, what Calvert interview for you not do all that? And I get to the interview and they ask me what's part of the Florida statute governs us. And I'm like, see, something told me be ready. Because like you said, it's weird because it's not like it pays a lot but it's very specific work and you really have to be grounded to do it because it's heartbreaking.
It is.
How did that prepare you to be the trial attorney you are now?
So I'm the person who handles all of the sympathetic witnesses, right? In my trial that I just had, she was a minor at the time of the accident. She was in college now, and she cried on the witness stand. So we had to take a break, come back in 20 minutes for her to get herself together. And then I'm used to it. I'm used to working with minors and trying to get them out of that space. So I was listening to a lot of her cues and things that may have triggered her. And because she cried when her own attorney was asking her questions. So I was like, oh, Lord, it's not going to be done. I don't want it to look like big old bad defense attorney beating up on this young girl. So, of course, I went up there. She was still very weepy. But by the time I was done cross-examining her, she was smiling, she was giggling, because I brought up things that brought her joy, right? And so I allowed her to dwell in that. And then I just mixed in some of the questions that I needed in order for my expert to knock it out of the park later. Sometimes you don't have to completely hammer in on someone. And you could also do it in a nice way. So I'm really good with sympathetic plaintiffs because I know how to talk to them and I know how to address the issues with compassion. So I think that's made me a much better trial attorney, and the jury can tell that I'm not beating up on someone, that I'm just trying to get the information that I need, and that's it.
Yeah, and I'll give a little context because we didn't talk about what you're doing now because I couldn't, all the things you're doing, right? Doing all the things. She is a trial attorney and she does insurance defense. So when someone has insurance and they're like, in this example, a car accident, she's appointed as the attorney for the defendant if it goes to trial and throughout the negotiations during settlement. And so she's usually representing the person being sued, the defendant, instead of the plaintiff. And then those things are always tricky because sometimes it's clearly one person's fault or another. Sometimes it's both parties, right? And the court has to get the facts out so the jury can figure out who they believe and then figure out fault and all those things. So what was the outcome of that trial you just described?
It was very successful. They gave the plaintiff exactly what we were asking for. Plaintiff's attorney was asking for over $2.3 million. We gave the jury a range. And then we explained the reason behind the range. So at the low end, if you accept X, Y, and Z, give them this. If you accept D, E, and F, give them this. And they gave them within that range. So it was a win. They found no permanent injury, which was huge, especially for someone who was a minor at the time of the accident who was still testifying that she was experiencing pain. It was a great experience, and it shows how critical jury duty is. I know a lot of people trying to get out of it, but we had such a great jury panel. They were educated, they were thinkers, they asked questions, they asked over 25 questions. It's critical that people actually go to jury duty if they're called and if they can, because we need that.
Yeah, we need people to serve in all the ways they're able to serve. And frankly, ways to serve. And you're definitely a great example of service. What advice do you have for our listeners who may be current law students or prospective law students?
Believe in yourself. Don't take no for an answer. Persistence is key. And get a mentor. Not just a mentor, but an advocate. So someone who can speak on your behalf in rooms that you're not in. Because even for people like me, I'm incredibly busy and I'm in a lot of rooms, but I can't be everywhere. So it's really important to have a support team that can be in those places that you cannot be in. And get a lot of different types of experience, especially while you're in law school. There's so many attorneys who want to be mentors, especially as first generation attorneys. I want to make sure that y'all don't fall under the same hurdles that I did. Y'all don't make the same mistakes that I did. So I want to be that open person that you can ask what you may perceive to be a stupid question to. So you really want to find your people and your tribe. Get involved early because a lot of, and you see it even in my career, your network is your net worth. And that's how I was able to move throughout my career, right? My sorority sister helped me ace that interview to get into my dream career. And then my professor from undergrad, I wanted to do something different. She's an appellate attorney with the public defender's office. She got me that interview there and prepared me for that interview. And so I was able to do that. And then while I was at an oral argument, an attorney actually saw me and he had his own firm doing civil defense work. And so he saw me doing that. And then he sent me an email and asked if he could speak with me. So it's a lot of who you, unfortunately. And then whenever you get to that point, you showing up and showing out because that will help you go throughout the process and get where you want to be.
Yeah, that's so true. And I tell people that however you may feel about it being who you know, it's the reality. So how about we get to know some more people? How about we network and find ways to do it that's very natural for you? People have an idea of what networking is and they don't like that idea. But I'm like, doesn't have to be that. You and I know each other because we're always volunteering and serving in different capacities. We're doing things we love. We're extroverted. So for us, it's easy to meet new people because we're constantly serving, right? And we love serving. You don't have to go to happy hours if you don't drink. Just skip the happy hour because they're at night. I have young kids. I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing happy. It's nighttime is the wrong time for me. And if you have a certain hobby, another great way. Volunteering, though, I really want to advocate for that because there's such a need. So, what are you up to now, Star? I've seen you do a lot of different things. And with Journey to Esquire, we're trying to promote people to dream big and think big. What do you think is next for you?
What's next for me is I'm running for judge. So this is my third time that I'm running for county court judge. And I've been everywhere, of course, trying to connect with people, trying to remind them how important it is to vote, trying to show them that our votes actually matter, and just trying to show them that representation matters on the bench as well. So just going through a lot of those numbers. I know every time I go to an investiture, and I always speak on behalf of Hall, someone will come up to me afterwards, especially during that period where the court was 50-50, half women, half men, because I would talk about that, and that's great. And people would always come up to me after, and they're like, I'm looking up there, and it doesn't look diverse. And they're right. It's not. But a lot of people don't go to investitures. They don't know what investitures are. They don't know how off it is. So you have to go and spread that knowledge to make people aware so that they can actually say, okay, I need to show up. I need to vote. And don't just vote for me because I'm a Black girl. Don't just vote for me because of where I am. Vote for me because I'm the most qualified person. I always try to hammer those things home with people and just talk about the importance of the vote. And unfortunately, so many people have become so empathetic. But I had a great grandmother who was illiterate, but she still went and voted in every single election. And she took me with her. And that was instilled in me. And that was something important. So that's something that I've always done. But I feel like there's been a huge disconnect. A lot of people are jaded by the system, but the only way that we're going to get over that is if we get active and engaged and vote.
Yeah, important message you want to send to everyone. Vote. Figure out who you want to vote for, but exercise your right. You vote for who you want. The second thing is we're a nonprofit. We don't endorse anyone. We can't endorse any political candidates. But what we can talk about is how to become a judge, because a lot of our listeners are thinking that. So many of our students have said, what? since I was young, I saw a judge and saw what they did, and I always wanted to do it. In different states, the process is different. There's appointment process, there's election process. And I think you've told me you've been through both, right? So can you walk us through what the appointment process is like?
Yeah, of course. So the appointment process it's an extremely long application, right? It's best, especially if you know that's your dream and that's your desire to someday be a judge. Start it as soon as you start practicing because they ask for like your past live trials, the result, so that you can always keep that running tally. They ask for opposing counsel who you've worked with, just so that you can keep it up to date. But there's an entirely separate part to that appointment process, and that's getting to know people, like having a connection in Tallahassee, for example, having a connection with the governor's office. All of these things are things that are important to know so that you can get in early and start navigating through that strategically because it's a lot more than just doing your application and submitting it. It's a lot more than that. And then whenever I was doing it, I'd have different eyes looking at my application again, just like I did for law school, right? I get it all together and I sent it off to a few individuals. They reviewed it for me, gave me any feedback that they have, individuals who have gone through the process, individuals who have not gone through the process, just because they have that insight and they can tailor it towards what the JNC might be looking for. So I think it's critical to know what's expected of you and to show up. And in order to be a good judge, you really need to be a great attorney, right? And you need to make those connections and forge those connections. Like I said, they put opposing counsel on there, right? They're going to call those people and talk to them about their experience with you. So you want to take that into every experience that you have throughout your legal career. And you just want to make sure that you're on top of things and that you're living by the golden rule, right? You're treating people either the same way or even better than you'd want them to treat you. And you're being reasonable and you're not denigrating. Just things like that. Just make sure that you're what's expected of you and that you just live up to that. And then you operate that political aspect as well and making sure that, okay, I can't just maybe just focus in on my county and doing all of these things, but you really need to get to know people. Have conversations. Look up judges who have been appointed and ask to go and speak with them. Schedule it through their JA. Hey, I'd really love to meet with Judge so and so just to pick their brain. And then go in and ask them what the process was like for them. How did they become a judge? Why did they want to become a judge? So it's a lot of those kitchen table conversations that kind of give you that good insight that can help you throughout that process. And then just being patient. The JNC process is a bear. They like people who are persistent. So even if you don't get in or don't get shortlisted, keep going. I'm sure y'all have heard the story of people applying over 20 times, people getting shortlisted over 10 times, and then finally they get it. So just don't give up.
Yeah. And then I would also recommend talking to people on the judicial nominating committee or conference, whatever the name is. It's usually JNC because I'm a member for the federal level. And then our role is to recommend to the executive, whether it's the president for federal positions or the governor for state positions. We can give a lot of insight. We can talk more freely. Our conversations are confidential between the JNC members. We can also have confidential conversations with candidates. And part of the JNC's job is not just to vet the people who apply, it's to recruit, right? Because they want the best they can get in their community. And yeah, so you got to be patient and start early. I love that. That's what I've been telling people. Go to the website now. If you know you want to be a state judge, a county judge, circuit, federal, whatever it is, go to the website, download the application now, start filling it out. You can fill out a lot of it already. And then, like Starr said, keep it updated. Because what you'll find is the window of time to apply is usually like 2 to 4 weeks. And you're a busy practitioner. You have billable hours, you have clients, you have trials, and they typically don't give extensions because they're on tight deadlines. And so really it favors people who already have their application ready and just may need to update it or have a couple of eyes on it. And then so the elections process, man, I think your mom has run for office too. I always admire people who run for office because it is just, you have to put yourself out there in the world. So again, we're not promoting anyone or any candidate. We're just talking about the process of running for office. Because a lot of people are interested. A lot of our students in the scholarship program have said that I want to run for office one day. And I saw the law as a way to get the credentials. Talk to us generally about what it's like to run for public office and particularly a judicial position.
Yeah. So it can certainly be rough, right? It's a lot of work. A lot of work. You're expected to be everywhere, and it starts well before you put your name on a ballot. So you really want to get connected with the movers and shakers. You want to get connected with the leaders in the community, and you want to build those relationships so that whenever you do announce, you have your team together already. So your team is something that you should have together before you even announce, before you even file. For judges, you have to have a committee because there are a lot of restrictions that judicial candidates have, things that they can and cannot do. So you need a committee to help you get off the ground and get moving and to help you have a successful campaign. Just really getting connected to those groups. And it all starts with just getting involved. I know a lot of people look at me now and they're like, oh, Star's such an extrovert and she's so social. I'd say I'm more an ambivert now. I used to be a huge introvert. The first time I ran for judge, I was a huge introvert. I didn't like it. But I think with introverts, what we don't like about going out there and networking is because we don't get to form deep, authentic relationships with people. So I just did it differently. I'm not a transactional person. So I'm not just going to talk to you because I want you to vote for me or to tell you that I'm running or any of those things. I'm going to talk to you because I want to know your story. So for me, I feel like it's taken longer because I favored those genuine, authentic conversations instead of just going to events, hopping from table to table saying, hey, I'm running for judge, vote for me, thanks. Because you weren't creating good relationships there. They knew that you're running. That's great. They know a little bit more about you. They've actually met you. A lot of people don't get to meet or interact with a judicial candidate. And especially since there are so many rules surrounding those races, you don't get the shortcuts, right? So you don't get to know their political affiliation. You don't get to know those things. So it makes it a lot more difficult to figure out who to vote for. But I always tell people that it's really critical to even research. I know even when I was younger, I'd be in the ballot box and I'd at least look up their website. I look up their name, see what Google tells me, and then cast my vote based upon what I see and who I think would be more experienced or who I think would be more fair. It's a lot of connecting and showing that you're a great attorney, showing that you can do it, and just building those relationships with people so that they trust you to be in that role because it's a role with a lot of responsibility. And you have to make sure that people can trust you with that level of responsibility. So doing things that are outside of the norm, like serving as a general magistrate or serving as a hearing officer, where you get some of that experience as well. Because I found that the judges that I like practicing more in front of, they're tried and true trial attorneys, but they also have that neutral arbiter experience, at least a little bit, so that they can go in and they know what's expected of them. So I think diversity of experience matters, which is something that I've tried to do, get diverse experience, both sides of the aisle, trials in front of judges, trials in front of juries. You can't know it all. No one does. That's just completely impossible. So don't think that you have to know it all. Don't think that you have to check off 99% of the boxes in order to get there. It's a lot of, and I think that's why some people like seeing the differences in practice areas too, right? Because it shows that you can go into a very new area and learn it and do well in that area. Because as a judge, you're going to see things that you may not have seen, but are you going to take the time to research it and learn that area and be able to come in there and make a decision about that issue? So I think that those kind of things translate very well. And I think that they're all going to be very helpful. So those are just a few bits of advice that I would give to people who are interested. But certainly reach out to people who have done it before. And then just be known in the community, have a reputation, a good reputation in the community, that you're a leader, that you're service oriented, because being a judge is service, right? So you want to continue with that service. And I think for some people, whenever they are deciding who to vote for, and it's someone who doesn't really have much service, it doesn't mesh, it doesn't fit for them, because it's like, well, why do you want to serve now? You haven't served ever in your life. So I think really finding something that you're passionate about, or a few things that you're passionate about, and getting very involved in those things. And you can be an introvert, you can be an ambivert, and you can still be successful running for office. My mom actually got elected the first time that she ran, so I helped her with her campaign. She got elected to be soil and water supervisor, the first Black person to sit in that seat here in Hillsborough County. It was a big seat, but it was a great seat because Hillsborough County is massive.
Yeah, that's the thing I hear from a lot of people. They don't realize how big the county is until they have to travel and start to get to know people. But yeah, being a judge, a lot of judges are actually introverted, but they have this prompt that they have to go through that requires them to step out of their shell. And it's also a very public facing position. No one's ever heard of you until there's that one line in one case, and all of a sudden you're all over the news. So you really have to be a very well-rounded person, have a tight-knit community around you to support you through that. And like you said, it is service, because usually people who have a ton of experience can be making a lot of money in private sector, but they choose to become judges, which pays less, but also can have a lot of power and influence, which is really important. So those are some great tips. But yeah, if you're interested in becoming a judge, here's some tips. Go get that application, download it, take a look at it, start filling it out, start expanding your network. You start that in law school, because I have a lot of law students now who've told me they want to be judge. I'm like, your networking starts now, and make sure you're practicing service and being mindful of your reputation and public persona, because it's going to follow you around for a long time. And I've heard about just the weirdest cases of people being investigated because a text message they sent, something they did and it was caught on video, something like innocuous, right? But once you're a judge, the standard is really high. So just hold yourself to that standard now. You don't have to worry about it. So we want to thank Starr for joining us today on the Journey to Esquire podcast. Any last words, Starr?
I always like to encourage people to mentor other people. A lot of y'all on Journey to Esquire, you have gotten to a position that little boys and little girls dream of. I do a lot of Great American teaching and working with children. And every time I go in, I ask them to close their eyes and envision how you perceive an attorney to look. Envision how you perceive a judge to look. And they don't look like a lot of the people participating in this program. So if you could even just dedicate an hour or a period of your time to Great American teaching so that they can see, oh, this amazing person is in law school. They're going to be an attorney someday. They're going to be a judge someday. Don't think that you have to reach a certain level in order to bring someone else up behind you. So I would really encourage you to do that. Billie Jean King says, if you can see it, you can be it. And I'm a true believer in that. So please go out and mentor and show our future generation that they too can be where you are. But other than that, I just wish you very well. I wish you all of the success that you desire.
Thank you, Starr. And then we'll see you guys next time on Journey to Esquire, the podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to another great episode of Journey to Esquire, the podcast. Support, share, subscribe. And for more, visit www.journeytoesquire.com.